Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Girl, a Guy, and a Buffy podcast. I'm,
Woo!
I'm one of your hosts. I'm Charles Swint.
Hey, and I'm your other host, Kate Balzer.
Hey, welcome back.
Yeah, you too. I'm excited. We're
I'm
starting
excited.
season three.
It's season three. We are three seasons. That is insane.
I
Um,
know.
Three seasons and 18 episodes. So I mean, it's not that insane, but
We're doing like as you said, we're doing the British version of seasons.
right, we are. We totally are. We got like 10 in us max, and then we're cutting out. We'll start again.
Exactly.
We are busy people. Um,
Yeah, so I'm excited about the season because we are doing something a little bit different in that for us, this is going to cover basically the whole like fall and spring for when we release episodes. We're going to do one whole year season long Big Bad.
yes. So we've got we basically season three is in two parts
Yeah.
this year. So we'll be focusing on the same topic, but from different aspects for this season. And again, for those of you who are just now joining us, a girl, a guy, and a Buffy podcast, Kate and I, we are two friends who have been watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer since the very beginning, and we are not a rewatch podcast. We sort of take it from a more thematic point of view, which we like to call our big bad of the season. So if you have not watched the entire series, you might want to press pause on this, go back, finish the season, and then come back and listen to us because we will spoil everything for you. And we don't
Yeah,
want to do that
everything in
for
the
you.
show is fair game.
Yes. Some things that are not in the show are fair games, so just be careful.
That's
Um,
true too. We'll try to warn you.
yes. We typically try to stay to the Buffy canon particularly. We don't try to tread too far into the Angel lore as much, but they're in the same universe, so sometimes those things can't be helped. And we don't really talk so much about the comic books, but every now and then we do. Because again, same universe, even though um Kate does not believe it to be part of the canon.
Which is solely based on what I do and do not like.
Right. But does consider a Slayerverse a part of the canon because
Exactly.
even though it's technically not.
Exactly.
So there.
At least I'm clear in my
This is true. Canon is
definition.
canon is based on what Kate likes.
Isn't that the way it should be?
If if you like it, it's a part of the canon. If not, then screw them.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, the theme, the big bad for this season
Oh, I guess.
is relationships.
Ooh,
Yes.
relationships. Mm.
So for the first half, for this first set of episodes that will be released throughout the fall, we are focusing on romantic relationships, which obviously are a massive part of the series. And then the second half will focus on family and friends. Again, also a massive part of the series. That's why we really wanted to delve into it at a more detailed level, because to me, that is the core of the show, are the relationships between those characters
Mhm.
and the journeys they go through.
Right. And we've said this before on the show. The show was written. It's a drama. It's a comedy dramedy, whatever you want to call it, genre show. But it's definitely written to be more so about the impact, like how can we impact relationships to create drama versus let's write a really sort of like streamlined story that would make sense to change the relationships between people.
Yeah.
Um, so we're going to be exploring a lot of that and all of this. So
Who are we starting with?
one would think we're like, oh, we'll just start with Buffy, but no, we're not going to do that because why would we do anything that anybody else would expect us to do? We're going to we're going to open this conversation up with Willow Rosenberg.
Awesome. Do you want to share what our question is for this
Yeah,
episode?
yeah. So the question that we came up with, as soon as I pull it up here, because it's right here in front of me. So the question that we came up with is, did Willow's romantic relationships redefine queerness on television?
Big
So I'm going to
question.
say that again. I think it bears repeating. Did Willow's romantic relationships redefine queerness on TV? So,
If I say yes
uh,
or no, are we done with the conversation?
yes. I mean, you could.
Don't worry, we're not going to do that to you.
Yes. Done. Thank you. This has been a Girl, a Guy, and a Buffy podcast. Please like and subscribe.
Yeah, I think I mean, it's such an important question. When we both started delving into her relationships and what, you know, was written about her, what we thought about her relationships. I mean, it's Willow's queer journey is so much the show's queer journey. Like what the show represents and what the show did, any ground it broke is so centered around Willow.
Yes, for sure. I would agree with that. And I think like you're talking about sort of the milestones that her character um brought to the table and things like
Right.
that. Obviously, Willow was not the first gay character to ever appear on television. On television, we know that much for sure. I It's really, I mean, it's hard to say. The first, again, I think we've talked about this before, like the first one sort of being um, Billy Crystal's character Jody and the comedy Soap. That was like back in the 70s. That's the
Yeah.
first one that I kind of really remember as being touted as the first openly, you know, queer character on like a primetime television show that was a series regular. Um, that had their own story arc and all of that stuff. And I say this because looking back and having watched those episodes, there's a lot of problematic stuff that they do
Sure.
with
In Soap.
and Soap with
Yeah.
that character and how they define what queerness looks like. And so Buffy being a show that took a character who was on a journey, came out and did all of those things and showed up in the world and just what I thought was, and at least for me, was really just an authentic way that wasn't traumatizing.
Yeah, I agree. It was like a beautiful opportunity for her to just explore who she was, her sexuality, her, what is her relationship journey without it being like, again, a very special episode or, doing it as a sweeps episode. So it had to be like this big dramatic moment. And then like we don't really do much with it otherwise.
Hmm.
It was really woven into her storyline. And maybe looking back, it was a little too subtle, you could argue, and that has a lot to do with where networks were at the time and
Hmm.
what they felt comfortable or not comfortable with. That might have been done differently, obviously, if it was now, but like again, that storyline broke a lot of ground. So it would, of course, would be done different today but we get to where we are today partly because of Willow's storyline for certain. Um, I remember, we're kind of jumping a little into the Tara relationship, but I remember when all that was going on, and there was like a moment. It was actually one of the episodes everyone hates, which I never remember what it is. With the Poltergeist frat house where Buffy and Riley
Oh,
go.
where the well things are.
That's it. Well, I don't know why I can never remember that
I
title.
only remember it because it's my least favorite episode.
Yeah, I probably have the opposite. I block it out. But and there was like a moment between the two of them on the stairs, and I was like, "Hey, is that something more than just like the two of them being friends?"
Hmm.
And I actually kind of liked it. Like it wasn't. It was just like it was how like somebody who's exploring their sexuality might slowly move into it. It was that's what I actually really liked that about it.
Yeah, so the whole thing was very, I think you're right in the subtlety of it all, because it's one of those things too. that as a queer person, you start to make these realizations, you start making these connections, you start going, wait, oh, this thing first, and then this thing. And so I think what was really nice about it was sort of allowing the audience to go along with that journey with her so
Yeah,
that
great point.
it wasn't like all of a sudden Willow's gay. What? And then everyone's freaking out because then it's a very special episode. And oh my gosh, now
Yes.
we have to like do this huge shift in who we thought this person was, as opposed to going through the journey with her of being like, oh yeah, I've met this person and this person has really excited me and makes me feel differently than anyone else has. And, you know, and I'm not going to introduce, like, the thing that I liked about it too was I'm not going to introduce this person to anybody else I know. I'm just
Mhm.
like, we're just going to hang out. We're just going to see what's going on. And so when Tara tells her, when they're having this discussion, and she's like, so you've got this whole big thing that I'm not a part of, and these Scoobies and all that, and they don't know anything about me.
Right.
And there's that like, and Willow says, well, yeah, and it's very important, and so are you, but I want something that's just mine.
Yeah.
And she says, I am, yours. Like at that moment, to me, always sticks out as like, like to me, that is like falling in love. Like that felt like so wonderful. And I was like, this here is that was excellent. Like I thought that that was an excellent moment of like, here you go. These two women are in a relationship. They've made a commitment to each other. They're not just friends, that there is a romance that is stirring here. Um, and then they go ahead and get a cat.
Yeah. What I liked about it too, was that sometimes the show frustrates me where it's either too subtext, too subtle in some of the things they do. I'm like, will you just outright come out and say it or do
Hmm.
it, whatever it is? I'm really glad it worked here. Like
Hmm.
their year-long development of their relationship. I'm glad it was that way. It worked for them. Um, it was it was beautiful to watch. It was a fun journey to go on. So I think that was a great use of that technique.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I really enjoyed it. Part of it too is that like all of Willa's relationships are, well, again, if we like it, we like it. If we don't, we don't. Um, I would say all of Willa's relationships, well, her relationship with Tara and her relationship with Oz, I think are both really, really beautifully done. Her entanglements with Xander and Kennedy, I'm not so much of a fan of. I'm not so
Hmm.
much of a fan of those. And so I think that's where things get a little messy, but but it's also part of her journey and that's her
Yeah.
story.
Yeah. Well, I think the Xander situation certainly reads differently on rewatch once you know she has the relationship with Tara. I think watching it the first time, I mean, obviously they're both cheating on their partners, but there's a different view to take of it, thinking, oh, Willow is just straight. So she's like, kind of can't decide between two guys and like one guy who did notice her right away and sought her out, and the other guy who she wanted her to, he never did until she was unavailable.
Hmm.
Like you can understand that attraction, especially for Willow, who always felt unseen so much of her life, or seen
Hmm.
in the wrong way, like teased, bullied by Cordelia, in ways that she wouldn't want to be seen. Um, yeah, to me, it takes on another perspective when you factor in now that, um, Willoughby finds her, sorry, let me say that again. When to know that Willow is queer, it changes it from her just being straight heterosexual.
Right. So what does that mean for you though? Like how does that change your perspective when you knowing the full story, like how does that change things
Yeah,
for you?
that's a good question. I don't know that I have an answer off the top of my head at the moment. How about you? Does it make any difference to you?
You know, it actually doesn't. It's a storyline that upon rewatch and rewatch, it just annoys me because it's like what it's one of those things that it doesn't really serve a purpose other than to create. Again, I feel like it's one of those situations where like we did this just to create tension between people, but like it didn't make any sense because everything in her relationship was, she was so happy with Oz and she was so, everything seemed to be going so well. I mean, I do understand the idea of like, oh, there's this person who likes me who I used to crush on really hard, who is now sort of paying attention to me. Um, but also, asshole, like you have a girlfriend, so leave me the fuck alone. Um, but for me, it doesn't change anything, and I don't think it sort of takes away um from the queerness of Willow and who she is because I mean that's sort of the journey that a lot of queer people go on and still continue to go on. And sexuality is fluid. I think we are at a place where we all understand that. And then sometimes you go through these things and you do these things because that's what you think you're supposed to feel. Like that's what you think you're supposed to do because everyone else is doing it too, and
Yeah.
that's just the path of least resistance. And so I, I honestly believe that she was in love with Oz. I truly do. I think Oz was probably her first truly great love, and that's also very hard to get over too. Like
Yeah.
the person that you first fall in love with and have like the dopamine stuff and all of that happening, I think that does something to your neural pathways. So I think there's something very special about that relationship that will never not be special.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I would agree with that. So should we start with Oz since we're there
Yeah,
discussing that relationship?
yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think her having a relationship with Tara changes anything to me about her relationship with Oz.
Hmm.
Um, it's just, I see it kind of one of those situations where Willow just loves who she loves.
Hmm.
I know in the afterwards, for a variety of reasons, they decided to be like, Willow is gay. And, we'll probably get into that later in the episode,
Hmm.
the back and forth of, originally Josh Whedon was going to make her bisexual, but the network was too fearful of that. So he was like, all right, well, she's going to be gay because I don't want it to seem like I did this for the moment, or I don't want Willow to seem flip-floppy.
Hmm.
Again, not that people can't go on like multi-step journeys of their sexuality
Hmm.
and back and forth and change as they grow, just within the context of how the character's written in the show. Um, so all that to say, it doesn't take away from anything to me anyway, any of her relationship with Oz, which was I it was all I mean, I think it's one of the Willow, in spite of sometimes being the problematic person in her relationships, had the best probably relationships on the show
Yeah,
as far
absolutely.
as like non-toxic,
Yeah,
or her partners were non-toxic.
her
She was the
she was
problem.
toxic. It's her. She's the problem.
Yeah, I
Um
was gonna say.
it's
To
her.
quote
She's the problem.
Taylor.
Right. Yeah, and absolutely. I her her relationship with that, like Oz was a non-problematic person, I think for the most part.
Yeah.
He was solid, he was a good communicator, he did all of that stuff. And so um it was great and it was really nice to see, and in these sort of teen dramas and these, and even in a genre show, like where it was like, oh, these were just two people who were talking. And so anytime she tried to start something or like create something weird, Oz would just be like, oh, hey. Like when she was like, hey, do you want to make out? And he was like, well, it would seem like you're trying to make Xander jealous, but I want to kiss you. like
Yeah.
when I'm kissing you and you're kissing me back. And so like that like even having being able to have those honest conversations, I mean, it's just like it's a blueprint for open and respectful communication between young people. And I think it's a great way to look at how to handle those complex emotions, especially when you're a bubble of hormones, trying to figure out what you want.
Yeah. Well, I think what's great about Oz too is for his age, he came off very centered
Hmm.
and like he knew who he was.
Hmm.
I think some of the changes and that evolves into the season 4 conflict when he becomes a werewolf, but prior to that, I think that is what made him very attractive as well.
Hmm.
He was mature in a way that you didn't often see teenagers. I won't even say teen boys. I mean, I know we tend to think teen girls are more, develop maturity faster than boys. But I think it wasn't even part of it was maturity, but it was just that sense of like he knew who he was
Hmm.
and he was okay with who he was, and he could see to the heart of who Willow was, which is what attracted him to her.
Right. Even when he's very much like, even after because we meet Oz before he's a werewolf, but even when he has this huge major shift in his life, when he becomes something other than what he was before, it doesn't change him all that much. I would say,
Yeah.
like, his basic person, like, he had every right to flip out and go crazy.
Right.
And even his flip outs, few though they were very contained and was like,
Yeah.
hey, you know what? I'm having big emotions right now. I'm a step away because I need to process those emotions and then I'm going to come back.
Yeah.
So,
And you really had to push him far.
right.
I think one of the things I loved about their relationship too is that by Oz being so sure of himself and so centered, that helped Willow um to settle too.
Hmm.
I think she was, and that she could be seen as more than just her big brain.
Hmm.
I think that relationship really helped her to evolve into who she was. And he was really loving and supportive, but also like wasn't afraid to be like, hey, watch it with the magic. I have concerns, and
Right.
push back on that. So it just to me represented, especially for that young of an age, such a like great example of a relatively healthy relationship.
Hmm. But so when we get, going into the whole like Terra of it all and having, all of that, I mean, do we want to talk about the Xander of it all?
I think so. I mean, it's such an important relationship in her life, and they have sort of that moment. And I think for Willow, it's obviously, oh, the boy I crushed on for so long,
Hmm.
finally sees me. And for Xander, it's, oh, I finally see this girl who I've just thought of as like best friend along with Jesse, I see her now as like a sexual being.
Right. Yeah.
And I don't think what happened between them to me is like not a surprise at all. It felt very like natural as a
Hmm.
potential. I'm not saying it had to go in that direction, but it wasn't to me like out of left field. And I think partly why like it worked for me is the how well Allison and Nick did with it, because it was best friends, best friends, best friends. All of a sudden, you're like, oh, they actually do have some romantic chemistry. I mean, maybe it didn't work for other people, but it did
Hmm.
for me.
Okay.
And so I was like, oh, now I'm like, dang it, they're cute and sweet, but I was like, bad, don't cheat, bad, bad, bad. Because Cordelia and Oz certainly didn't deserve that. I was so, in that respect, you're disappointed in the characters for going that
Mhm.
direction, but it worked for me as like a storyline.
Yeah, I feel like this is where I would disagree with it because I just like for me, I didn't. I mean, were they cute? I mean, yes. I mean, and it's fine. They're great. I mean, they both acted those storylines well or whatever. For me, pairing her with Oz just sort of ruins it for me, for everyone, until you
You mean
give
Xander?
no, well, no, when you put her with
Oh,
Oz, it's like seeing
oh,
how cute she is with Oz
I gotcha.
makes
Everyone
me
else is
impossible.
ruined.
It's like why put her with anybody else? Because for me, this is like
The
perfect pairing.
best. Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah.
then when so then when this thing would say like and you wrote it to a point where it was that where it was like especially compared to everyone else around them. And maybe that's the issue is that you're looking at Buffy and Angel, who are so tragic and everything that's
Yeah.
going on, and Xander and Cordelia, who are just like humping like bunnies, but
Yeah.
also just like at each other's throat all the time, and it feels
Right.
very toxic and dysfunctional. And
Yeah.
then you've got this lovely couple here who are just a delight to watch, who are super cute, who are going back and forth, and it's just like so putting her with everybody else, anybody else just feels like, ugh, why'd you do this? Like, why ruin a good thing? But that's what Jess does. He
Yeah.
takes it and makes people hurt. And people make bad decisions. I mean,
Oh,
people make bad
totally.
decisions. So
That's
again,
what
like
I'm
you
saying.
said, I don't think it's not like a complete like, how could they ever do that? Like,
Yeah.
obviously.
I
Um,
I mean, if Willow was going to make a bad decision, that one made like total sense.
the
Like
most
if they had
sense.
had her cheat with somebody else, I would have been like, no,
Yeah, yeah,
that I'm not feeling that. But like she wanted Xander for so long,
right.
or, and not to take away her agency, it might have been she thought she wanted Xander for so long
Hmm.
just because it was like the one boy in her life. And so, he was obviously didn't see her that way. And then when he finally did, of course, it was like, I finally get like what I want. But then she realizes it not is not what I
Right.
want.
That's not what I want
I
at
had
all.
a good thing. I messed it up. And honestly, it's really impressive the way they are able to bring that back.
Hmm. And even
That,
Oz's forgiveness of all of that
yeah,
too, like the fact that he's like, okay, but I need time, like,
right,
you know.
right. Yes. And then, leading into speaking of him being like more mature and considerate of her, the when she is pushing to have sex and sets up that romantic evening
Hmm.
and he's like, do you really want to do this, or is it just because you think we should because you're trying to make up for
Right, for
what you
everything
did
that's
with
happened.
Xander? And I was like, that is like one of the best Oz moments. Come on, like
Yeah.
there like people could learn from Oz.
I think we should all be looking at the Oz character as a blueprint for how to have mature and
Oh
responsible
yeah,
relationship conversations with our partners.
yeah,
And asking those tough questions and really sort of like digging into that.
right.
Um,
Well, and it's interesting too to speak to our larger question. I was just thinking about this. Is even though they were in a heterosexual relationship, Oz was not like your stereotypical, as we've been saying, high school boy. Um, while he was portrayed as straight, the fact that he was in a band, he was not afraid to like color his hair, wear, dress like in that funky style, a little bit kind of like California skater punk music guy. Um, you know, it reflects sort of that element of outsider, which is very much an element of queerness in the queer community. So in some ways, like, all of those relationships had those elements to it, whether a character was specifically queer or not.
I mean, they're all outsiders, and so
Right.
and that's a given. Um, I mean, I think there's also there to your point, I think yes, there's a safety in Oz because Oz doesn't present as sort of the typical heteronormative teen boy,
Right.
a la what Larry was trying to do and
Right.
overcompensate and do all of that stuff for, which, then we later come to find out, Larry's story and all of that stuff. So it's one of those. So again, it's one of those things where she's in a relationship with someone who feels non-threatening, who feels safe. And if
Yeah.
I have to, I've kind of view it this way, like if I'm a person who's choosing, if I am a gay person who underneath it all sort of knows and or has an inkling or isn't quite sure what's going on, but just say like I need to, like I'm supposed to be with this person and this person shows up and likes me in that way, especially because the person who is my best friend doesn't like me in that way and can't see me in this way. And this is supposed to be my safe person because
Yeah.
he's my best friend. But then this other person comes along who is who I don't know, who just kind of out of nowhere likes me for me, but doesn't seem nearly as creepy or completely off-putting as every other guy around me. And this is what I'm supposed to, quote unquote, supposed to do. Why not take the safe choice? Why not go with the like kind, sweet guy
Yeah.
who's not gonna hurt me like these other men will do?
Right. But I think what's nice about the way the relationship is presented is even though he might be the quote unquote safe choice, it's not presented as settling.
No, 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 no. It's not a
Yeah.
settle.
Yeah.
It's not. And when I say the safe choice, um, I mean that from like a little like physical safety sort of situation and an
Right.
emotional safety situation where it's like,
Right.
I'm not going to date this, like the jock of the high school or,
Yeah.
whatever,
Gotcha.
who's going to be like, oh yeah, give me that, and doing all that weird boy stuff that boys do in high school that feels very aggressive.
Right.
Whereas Oz was not an aggressive person.
Yeah.
Um, and so I think if I'm struggling with my identity and I'm struggling with all of that stuff, but I feel like, well, I have to the go the straight route and do this like heteronormative relationship, then this feels like the best of my options. And quite frankly, I don't think it's going to be that bad. So maybe I can do this and maybe it's going to be okay. And maybe I can find love with this person and I do love this person. And then I don't have to worry about all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it's just so it's really interesting to see. And again, and it makes sense too in college when you're like, okay, even though they didn't leave town, they were still in Sunnydale, but at least she was you were in a bigger community, you were in a bigger space
Right.
and a larger community, so it allows you a little bit more freedom to explore um and do all that. I mean, I know I did. Like when college came, I was like, okay, I can you know, I felt like I could breathe a little bit more. I felt like I wasn't so confined to, um,
Yeah. I mean,
and I
that's the
made
way,
an active choice about that too. I mean,
sure.
um, you were saying?
Oh, I was gonna say, I mean, that's what that time is for, whether you're in college or not, but that period after high school, you're on your own for the first time in some way or another, even if, you're in college and come home to live with your parents in between um semesters and years, there's still an element of being on your own, figuring out who you are, even more so than you were doing in high
I-
school.
but even when you see it here in Buffy, like when they go to college, they separate. They come that whole season, they're not really hanging out with each
Right.
other. Buffy's with Riley, Xander's with Anya, and and so those
And yet I feel like the vibe about that season by most fans is it's like, nobody like outright for the most part hates it. But I think most people are kind of like, it's not my favorite. It's not my
right,
least favorite. It's meh.
it's
Like
meh.
had some of the best like one-off episodes, but
Sure. I mean,
um
we get Something Blue and Hush and
right, exactly.
Restless
Yeah.
and I mean, but if it weren't for that season, we wouldn't have Tara. We wouldn't have which
Oh yeah.
again, which when it happened, and I think they did it in such a lovely way, where it was like having Willow with us sort of spoiled it's one of those things where it was, I don't know, and this sounds weird, where it's like Oz was the perfect guy, and so like if you're not going to be with Oz, then like you can't really be with anybody else.
It's true. I mean, I will agree that poor Tara slash Amber had a lot to live up to, because Oz and Willow were such a great couple and so beloved. And yet they do it.
The choice the choice for her to come out and to do all that stuff is such a great thing because if you set her up with, it's one of those weird things. It's like if you set her up with any other man, he's going to fall short. And so because of how we look at relationships, and I think this is where we kind of get into the heart of it all, is like
Yeah.
when we start looking at relationships and we're like looking at a relationship between a man and a woman versus a relationship between two women, which those relationships, while having a lot of very similar um traits and things going on, um, are inherently are have some inherent differences, and how women relate to each other is very different. How men relate to each other. I think how, gay men relate to each other in relationships is different from how like a straight couple would relate to each other in relationships sometimes too. And so it makes sense, and it's also like you're going to give her, this perfect guy who then leaves, and then so I don't know, it's one of those things like I'm talking myself into a circle here, but it's one of those things where it's like, oh, well, now you give her the perfect girl, you
Yeah,
know?
well, I think one thing that they did that was really smart was um Willow sort of almost took the Oz role in their relationship, and that she was like the
Hmm.
more centered, confident one.
Right.
Um, and so, and she was the one I think who really saw Tara for who she is,
Hmm.
and was attracted to her, romantically, emotionally, mentally. Um, but that, unlike the Willow Oz relationship, where I think there was a lot of him, not that they didn't have a good equal relationship, as we said, but I think he brought a lot more to helping her mature.
Right.
Whereas with Willow and Tara, they both brought something different for each other. So Willow was more confident in who she was and pursuing someone now that she had been in a such a great relationship previously. Whereas Tara brings the experience of being gay and being in
Hmm.
a relationship with a woman. So they kind of balance each other out in interesting ways.
Right. And that there is something really kind of interesting about that pathway. And again, like you're saying, like Willow is very much sort of the pursuer of the relationship. It's not,
Mhm.
it's something that she starts seeking out. It's something that she's like, oh, this is a thing. The other, I think the difference too is that Oz was, we consider Tara to be a Scooby for sure, no doubt, but Oz's involvement in the gang, especially even from early days, was much more so than what Tara was. Like it takes Tara a while to kind of get integrated into the thing. It's not until family, I guess is that the
Yes. Yeah.
Tara's birthday episode. Oh, she's one whose birthday we
That's
celebrated.
right.
Side
So
note, side note,
I
we
know.
were having a off conversation. We were like tangent here. We were having our like pre-show meeting and we were talking about like people's birthdays and stuff like that. And we were like, "Oh, did we celebrate anybody else's birthday on the show other than Buffy's?" And I just realized
We
now in
just
this
realized.
conversation that we do attempt to celebrate Tara's birthday.
Right.
And then that's the thing that sort of ingratiates her into the group,
Right.
but it's only because like but she's invited into, and again, this feels Yeah. So it's a weird thing. Like this is one of those things where it's like, okay, she's a part of the group, but she's a part of the group because, and I guess Oz was too. But like she's a part of the group because she's Willow's girlfriend.
Well,
The
that's what I was
same
saying. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
the same way that Anya is with Xander. Like she's a part of the group because they come with the package.
Yeah, well, that's what I was gonna say. I think that's the difference is when you're in high school, it's very different because everyone's in the same location. They're taking the same classes,
Hmm.
so I think that's easier when you move into the adult world. Not everyone is doing everything together like that. Buffy's taking different classes than Willow, and Tara's taking different classes than Willow and Buffy. So that makes sense
Yeah.
why she fits in differently or how she's incorporated differently. And the same with Anya. Um,
Well, especially, yeah, since they are not even in school. Like Anya's not even in
right,
school, you know.
right, exactly. Yes.
Um, so
And then on top of the fact that Willow is exploring an avenue that nobody else knows about, she didn't even know it was a part of her. So she's keeping it quiet. And so nobody's getting to know Tara while Willow's getting to know Tara. It's
right.
not like she's bringing her along and saying, oh, this is my friend. Um, a little bit more in the back half of season 4,
Yeah, yeah.
but certainly not in the beginning when they become initially friends. And as their romance develops. So that's part of it too.
Yeah. Um,
Versus like in comparison to when Buffy and Riley start dating, Riley's involved in what
sure.
they're doing much sooner, not only because he's her boyfriend, but also obviously because of
The initiative, yeah.
the initiative. I was going to say initiation. I was like, no, that's not what it's called. So again, that plays a different or creates a different dynamic in the group.
Right. And so yeah, it's interesting how those relationships, like the romantic relationships of everyone else, like the people who are involved, like they're involved in these relationships because of the romantic entanglement they are. So they're like
Yeah,
by proxy or whatever, but
right.
as opposed to Buffy's relationships who she just happens to be she's dating people who are already sort of in her field, as it were.
Right. Exactly. True.
She should stop dating where she works.
Yeah. Discuss some of the toxic parts of Tara and Willow's relationship.
I mean, we can, yes. I mean, I think it's we've talked about it before, but I mean, I think it's
True,
super
true.
easy just to be like, yeah, obviously, there's the abuse, there's um the codependency, there's the addiction, there's I mean, it's it starts off beautiful and turns into a toxic relationship.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting. And then, comes together again before it completely ends.
Right. In
Um,
such a very rushed way, but
I
for the
feel like
emotional stakes, when you
I
look
feel like
back,
looking back now that we know what was going to happen to Tara, that she was going to be killed, and we should have like suspected when the fact that like she was just like, I know we should take our time, and you've hurt me, and blah 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 blah, but like, can we just be kissing now? And we should have
mhm.
been like, I
I
think we
wish
should
it
be suspicious of this
right of this super
reconciliation.
happiness. I wish they had brought them together a little bit sooner to give
Yeah,
us just a little bit more time of healing and
yeah,
being like, okay, yay, we get them back. So that when it does happen, we
right.
could still have that same moment of everything happening. I just wanted maybe another episode or
Yeah,
something. Like, could we
yes.
have like could I have like two full episodes of them happy or like one full episode of them happy and then in the second episode something weird happens and then the shot happens or
Yeah, well, I mean, the fact that like Joss Whedon's all about the pain, that would have made it even more painful. I mean, it was
yeah,
painful enough, but imagine having like a full episode where they're happy together and Dawn's all happy that they're back together and
like
not just that
everybody.
moment.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And then she gets killed. Yeah,
That,
that would have just been like
what are you doing?
multiple
Yeah.
multiple stabs to the gut.
Um, and who knows why that didn't happen, but um,
Probably running out of time in the episode.
and then there's, and then there's the Kennedy of it all. Um,
All right, I actually don't mind Kennedy. I think it's a rebound relationship.
yeah,
I don't think they have like a ton of great chemistry. It's kind of like the Riley Buffy of it all, but
yeah,
I don't hate Kennedy. I understand, like maybe just as I get older and mature, I can see who Kennedy is, and in some ways, like she's probably what Willow needed because Willow was so uncertain of herself, particularly when it came to her magic, understandably because of what she had just done.
sure,
But she needed that like boldness and brashness of Kennedy to kind of who embraced her power, and appreciate kind of appreciated it and didn't really understand the magnitude of what the magic could do, so she could kind of like be like, you can do it, you got this. um
yeah.
so
I
I think
would
it was kind of like who Willow might have needed in the moment.
Now that you bring that up, that's a really good point, and I would say I would appreciate Kennedy more if they leaned into that more, right? If they
Mm-hmm.
leaned into that idea that she was going to be Willow's cheerleader, that she was like
Mm-hmm.
that she was eh, that she saw the potential of, again, sort of going back to, I see the potential. Yes, you are powerful. Yes, you can do this, all of this other stuff. Especially, and I think the thing that I have issue with is that because Kennedy has no idea what she's talking about anything, that
Yeah.
she's just like the spoiled brat who comes in, who's just kind of talking out of the side of her ass most of the time. I mean, she might be right about some things and she might have like this gut instinct, but she has no idea what she's talking about. And so I th maybe I would have liked her more if she had some more experience in it, because she's like, oh, this magic thing, it's all like new agey and like, oh my God, like what are you doing? Like it just felt very weird to put her in this situation where she's like, I've got to explain this magic to you and all of this other stuff, but you don't really understand it. But I don't know.
but maybe
It's
that's what
fine,
willow but maybe that's also what Willow needed, because by explaining it to Kennedy, she's making sure that she's doing it for the right reasons and she's
maybe.
putting the right barriers in place, or whatever it is. I think it's because she's walking such a fine line. I mean,
Yeah,
Willow
that's true.
herself, of figuring out how to get back into the magic without going over to dark magic, and doing it on a hellmouth while the first evil is trying to like end the world. So I understand that. I mean, I'm not ride or die on Kennedy and
No, no,
Willow.
no, no. But that's a good point,
But
though. Maybe that's what she needs. Yeah.
I don't hate it. Even if every time I've gone back and watched, I still am like, yep, nope, don't hate it. I can see some value in it.
I will say I
it's
hate her less every time I rewatch.
yeah,
I
that's
hate
how
her
I
less
felt too.
every time I rewatch.
I think the first time around, I found her much, much more annoying.
Yeah.
But now I don't. I think I can appreciate what she was bringing and to the character, to the relationship. Um, But like if the show had gone on another season, I would have been like, no, they need to find a way to break them up. Like she's the rebound, do it for a little while. Great. Now let's let Willow move on to like whoever the next woman is.
Well, and so, as we said at the top, and we're like, we don't really talk about the comics very much,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
in this case, we're going to, because it like even in the comics, they're still together, but they're not really together. Because I think in the comics, spoiler
But
alert,
eventually they break up because
I
I
think so, yeah, but I think also Kennedy's dead. She dies. I think it's one of those things where Kennedy has also died a couple of times too,
I
or
don't
something. There,
remember.
I remember reading something like that. shoot us a message if you know the facts about Kennedy. But I just not JFK. The other Kennedy. Um, so yeah, I don't know. I mean, she's a rebound girlfriend. She's very much sort of there to facilitate. I do say the thing that she that she does and serves the purpose of is establishing for us, the audience, and for everyone else. And this is probably where we're going to get into some of in a bit of a tricky area or whatever for some people, is that I think that establishes, uh, like Willow being like, yes, I'm a lesbian. She has said it
Yeah,
before. She has done it
right,
before, but like she's continuing on this path with women. Like it's not like, oh, it wasn't just Tara. You know,
right,
it is even though she says it wasn't women, it was a woman who did this for me. And so maybe that also leads to some, where some people kind of feel like that could be a problematic statement, or
right.
or what that is. But again, it's the fact that she again chose to do that. Is that, is that by erasure? Is that uh, I don't think that it is. I think if they put her with a man after Tara and don't really sort of acknowledge that or give her any sort of agency to be like, I'm a bisexual, then I then I don't think I don't think you can really say it. I don't know. This I'm going to stand on business. I'm going to say it with my full chest. I just don't think that it's by erasure. I think it's a weird, and this is where like in some of the research that we've been doing, because we talked about, the by erasure aspect of it all, and because she's been with men, because she's been with women, you know, does that make her bi? And like Vamp Willow is kind of bi, and all this, like there's all these things. She loses her memory. She kind of like snuggles up with Xander a little bit. Like, does she have bi tendencies? Is that the case? I don't think it's like, I think it's interesting. Like, yes, as an audience member, you can observe and you can be like, oh, yes, I see bisexuality in that. Absolutely. The character has said it was written as such for whatever reason, lack of awareness, lack of acceptance, whatever, doesn't matter. The character was written and had said on multiple occasions, I am a lesbian. Point blank, period. You cannot argue the text.
Right.
She is a lesbian. She is not bisexual. It's about a lesbian's journey. Like it's about
Mm-hmm.
this woman who is a lesbian who dated men.
Mm-hmm.
And I know lots of lesbians who dated men. I know lesbians who've married men.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
then,
sorry, I was just saying on the flip side, and people have written about this as well, but giving Joss Whedon his due and the show its due that he stuck to his guns and he didn't make it a one-off thing or just a thing to
mhm,
get ratings. That like Willow legitimately went on that journey and she explored her sexuality and realized she was gay and had, you know, uh, um, what am I trying to say? I lost my vocab word. But she had very fully developed relationships with women on the series before it ended.
right. And there wasn't, I mean, at least with Willow, there wasn't a lot of queer baiting that was happening
Thank you.
with
That is
her.
like the words I was looking for. Yes, yes, yeah.
And so I mean, with some other characters, I think there there was probably some queer baiting with some other characters.
Yeah.
Like, but I think they're just, but I think it was very, I think they were very genuine towards that. Uh, was it perfect? No. Um,
No, I
I,
mean, obviously the fact that it took so long for Willow and Tara to kiss,
mhm.
was problematic and that they weren't given tons of opportunities to show physical affection and have
I,
sex scenes and whatnot. I mean, the
right.
fact that like this blew my mind. I knew about Willow and Tara's kiss being the first lesbian kiss in prime time, I
Hmm.
believe is what it was. But the fact that when Kennedy and Willow have sex and touch, that was the first lesbian sex scene on broadcast TV. And I was like, well, first off, I can't believe it was given to Willow and Kennedy. For all
Right.
I'm gonna like, oh, I'm okay with Kennedy. I was like, damn it, it should have gone to Willow and Tara. But like, but I mean that's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, and yeah, and even in that there, I mean, you have this character which is great and all of that stuff, but there, like you said, there's so very few moments where
Right.
like actual moments of intimacy were allowed to happen,
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, you got a whole episode of Riley and Buffy just
And everyone's like,
fucking
we could have done without that.
like, and that's the one that everyone's like, could we not? Could like honestly, could not. I could just for days,
So
just
true.
fucking for
So
days.
true.
And could not like did not need it, but would have loved to have seen more.
Yeah.
I would have traded that one episode for like six more kisses and a sex scene or whatever
I'm with
between
you.
Willow and anybody else.
I'm totally with you. All right, so to kind of wrap it up, bring it back to our question, did Willow's romantic relationships redefine queerness on TV?
I'm still gonna go with yes. I think it definitely moved the needle forward. I think it brought more visibility to queer characters, especially lesbian characters,
Mm,
which are historically underrepresented, are still underrepresented. We don't see enough lesbian characters, especially in just sort of these romantic situations, and so I think it really raised raised awareness. I think it allowed people to see themselves in it. And I think because of the journey that she goes on, I think it brings up a lot of feelings for a lot of queer people and a lot of, and so it's like, whenever you see yourself in any sort of way, shape, or form, and I think even if it's just a little bit, there's some, that's a good thing. So is she redefining it? I don't know if she's redefining it. Well, I don't know if redefine is necessarily like the word that I would use. I don't know if she's redefined anything, but um I think she moved the needle forward. I think she changed expectations.
yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think it opened up a lot of roads that had been closed
Hmm.
previously, certainly on broadcast television and telling um, queer storylines and relationships. Um, Obviously having first, kiss, first sex scene
Hmm.
for broadcast TV. I mean, it's obviously sad that it took that long. Um, but I think it's great that they were able to do that. And it's too bad they, couldn't have pushed the needle further. But I also appreciate the fact that it was done in earnestness and with sincerity. I think that helped change things a lot too. That stop doing it, as you said, like in a queer baiting way or for ratings or very special episode. Just let it be a part of the show and a part of the character's journey.
Hmm.
So yeah, I agree. I mean, it moved the
Yeah.
needle. It was the baby steps. It opened things up, um, so that other creators, other shows, other characters were able to even take it farther.
Yes. So we would love to hear what you all think
Yes.
about Willow's journey and what she's gone through. Is I mean, is Willow's character a part of this whole movement of by erasure? I am definitely open to hearing people's thoughts on this, because I know um it's a sensitive topic for people. It's a topic that it's important to people, and it really is an important issue that we do need to recognize and be talking about more. So, like we said before, hit us up. Uh, We're all over the social medias. Where are we, Kate? I don't know where we are anymore.
Stop asking existential questions at the end of an episode.
I know.
You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at abuffypodcast.com, or you can email us at abuffypodcast@gmail.com. So definitely hit us up on the socials, send us emails, your thoughts on the podcast. Be sure to rate and review us anywhere that you listen to this podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Feedback really feeds us and helps us create an even better show.
Yeah. So thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you next time.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye.